Okay, let's dive in. Cloud transformation, the great migration. It sounds like this mandatory rite of passage for every organization today, doesn't it?
It really does. It's on every CIO's roadmap.
But here's the reality, and we see this all the time. It is notoriously complex. I
Right.
mean, we see endless headlines about organizations, even massive Fortune 500s, that just get overwhelmed.
hmm
They suffer these budget overruns they can't explain, and projects that just stumble right when they should be taking off. It feels less like a strategic evolution and, more like a series of expensive guesses in the dark.
It absolutely does, and especially when you think about the scale and the architectural demands of modern enterprise environments.
Right.
I mean, you're often spanning legacy systems, hybrid cloud, and these increasingly complex regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
And that friction, that complexity,
Yeah.
that's exactly why we're diving into today's subject.
Okay.
We're going straight to the core solution, designed to cut through that complexity. The Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF for Azure.
CAF. I like it. It's an acronym that already implies structure, safety, and a clear path forward.
That's the goal.
So our mission today is, I think, crucial for any of you listening who are facing or maybe planning or are already kind of stalled in a migration project. We are going to extract the core, detailed, practical structure of this framework. We want to identify that actionable step-by-step guidance that helps organizations not just, lift and shift, but to fundamentally plan, deploy, and operate Azure solutions while, and this is key, aggressively minimizing those notorious risks.
Security failures, cost overruns.
Exactly, and maximizing the return on that investment.
Precisely. And you should think of the CAF not just as like a static set of documents or best practices. It's really an engineered, orchestrated roadmap for a complete transformation.
Orchestrated, I like that word.
It provides guidance across the technology stack, the business model, and so critically, the organizational structure. And what's really fascinating here is how it structures the entire journey. We're talking about an enterprise-grade architecture built around 7 core methodologies.
7. Okay, that gives our learner exactly the structured framework they need to contextualize, the flood of Azure documentation out there. So give us the quick preview. How are these 7 methodologies organized?
Okay, so they're organized into 2 distinct but deeply interconnected flows. This separation is really the key insight into why CKF is successful, where these unstructured migrations tend to fail.
Okay.
First, you have the 4 foundational methodologies. That's strategy, plan, ready, and adopt. These are sequential. You do one after the other to physically architect, provision, and deploy your Azure foundations and your first workloads.
The build sequence. Simple enough.
Exactly. Then, and this is the important part, running constantly, in parallel, through the entire cloud lifecycle. From the moment you start thinking about strategy all the way through years of operation, you have the 3 operational methodologies.
Which are?
Govern, secure, and manage. These ensure that the foundational work you did in the first 4 phases actually translates into sustained success and operational excellence.
That makes immediate sense. So you've got a sequential build phase combined with this perpetual, ongoing operational oversight phase that immediately addresses why so many projects fail.
It does.
They build it, they do the foundational 4, but they forget or they poorly execute the ongoing governance, security, and management. They just focus on the delivery, not the long-term operations.
That's the trap.
That brings us directly to section 1 then. Defining the ETF and understanding its fundamental value proposition. You mentioned measurable business outcomes. How does a structure like this actually deliver those?
So the mechanics are all rooted in how the guidance is organized and the integration of tooling. It's systematic. Unlike just reading general documentation, the CAF organizes all the necessary Azure guidance docs, templates, reference architectures into these 7 distinct phases.
Okay.
And each phase is tied not just to a technical action, but to a specific strategic outcome and a prescriptive implementation approach. This makes sure that every single action, from the initial whiteboard session to the final optimization loop, is tied back to a defined business goal.
So it's all about the how to turn that architectural theory into a deployed, governed reality. Let's just reiterate those 7 methodologies, but maybe focus on the flow, the inputs and outputs you mentioned.
Certainly. The foundational flow kicks off with strategy. That's all about alignment and measurable goals. The output there is your business justification and your success metrics.
Got it.
That feeds directly into plan, which is focused on organizational readiness, skills assessment, creating a realistic, costed roadmap. That roadmap then informs ready.
Ready is the technical part.
Right, that's the technical deployment of your secure foundation, the landing zone. And finally, adopt, which is deploying the production workloads into those zones and delivering that immediate business value.
So those four build the house and move the occupants in.
A perfect analogy.
And what about the ones that keep the house standing, secure, compliant, and cost-effective?
Those are the operational success methodologies, always running in parallel. Govern ensures enterprise control, compliance automation, and critical cost optimization. Secure is focused on protecting workloads from threats using things like zero trust. And manage is for operational excellence, high availability, and continuous improvement through monitoring and automation.
That integration is absolutely key. So now let's pivot to the critical challenges the CCAF solves, the why use it. Because anyone who has lived through a big migration knows the nightmare scenario.
Yes.
The timeline triples. The budget doesn't just evaporate, it combusts. The CKF claims to eliminate these common failure points.
It's fundamentally through structured, validated guidance that's enforced by automation. The framework isn't theoretical.
Okay.
It's based on lessons learned, and it's been validated across thousands of successful deployments globally. This spans the very largest Fortune 500s all the way down to small tech startups.
So that's the first core benefit right there.
Exactly. Reducing migration risk significantly. You're not charting unknown territory. You are following a highly prescriptive roadmap that has already been stress tested.
That validation gives immediate confidence. It turns this from a bespoke IT project into like a repeatable engineering standard process.
Okay, what about the perpetual headache of the public cloud cost?
Cost. This is where governance becomes absolute paramount and the automation really pays off. The CSF provides powerful mechanisms for optimizing cloud costs effectively.
Oh, so.
Well, first, through proven patterns for resource right-sizing. We're talking continuous analysis of usage data to scale down over-provisioned resources. Second, it uses really stringent cost governance policies, enforced programmatically.
Yes. Using tools like Azure Cost Management and Billing. This lets you define budgets, create alerts for spending anomalies, and even automate the shutdown of non-production environments during off hours. It stops the bleeding before it even starts.
So we mitigate risk, we optimize costs. The third big challenge is velocity, speed. Cloud projects often just slow to a crawl because of internal paralysis.
Fatigue, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The CAF directly addresses this by aiming to accelerate deployment timelines substantially.
Yeah.
It does this through prescriptive roadmaps, specifically by defining these ready-made architectural components.
Okay.
When the next 6 technical steps are validated, documented, and available as infrastructure as code templates, that decision paralysis just vanishes. You spend your time executing, not debating.
That makes sense. Structure translates to speed. Now, security and compliance. For many of our listeners in regulated industries, this is absolutely non-negotiable.
And this is maybe the most crucial integrated benefit. Ensuring security and compliance from day one. The CAF forces you to embed governance and security frameworks immediately, right in the ready phase, when you build the landing zone.
So that's not an afterthought.
Never. It means everything you deploy is aligned with industry standards right out of the box. We're talking pre-mapped controls aligned with major requirements like SOC2, PCI DSS, and HIPAA. Compliance is the foundation, not a bolt-on at the end.
Building security in, not layering it on top later. Okay, and finally, just the overall benefit of structured thinking, avoiding those invisible traps.
Exactly. The final benefit is explicit guidance on avoiding common pitfalls. The source material specifically calls out these recurring failures. Governance gaps, security vulnerabilities, uncontrolled cost overruns. The CAF closes those gaps before they become critical failures in production.
That makes the CAF sound less like a guideline and more like the ultimate operational blueprint. You also noted it integrates with other Microsoft guidance.
Absolutely. And this distinction is crucial. It integrates seamlessly with the well-architected framework and WAF and the Azure Architecture Center.
So clarify that handoff for us. Where does the CF stop and the WAF begin?
Think of it this way. The CF is the operational roadmap for the entire cloud journey, the when and the where. It dictates that in the ready phase, you must deploy a secure landing zone.
Okay.
Once you get to the adopt phase and you start deploying a new application, the WEF takes over. It provides specific guidance on the 5 pillars: cost, operations, performance, reliability, and security for that individual workload.
So CF for the enterprise environment, WEF for the individual application design.
Exactly. It's true end-to-end guidance.
Okay, let's follow that yellow brick road now, the sequential foundational journey. So we start at the beginning, methodology 1, strategy. What is the outcome here, and why do so many companies skip it?
The strategic outcome is so simple, but so vital. Align cloud adoption initiatives to measurable business goals and ROI targets. And companies skip it because it's hard work.
It's not technical.
Right. It requires alignment between the executive suite, finance, and IT. They default to a technical goal, like move 50% of VMs to Azure, but without a business driver, success is meaningless. It just looks like an IT cost center.
So what's the detailed implementation approach then? How do we move from we want to be in the cloud to actual measurable goals?
The framework provides the scaffolding to map those broad business drivers directly to quantifiable cloud outcomes. For example, the business driver might be accelerate innovation.
Vig.
Very. But the quantifiable cloud outcome becomes reduce application deployment time from 3 months to 3 weeks, or increase developer velocity by 40%. Now you have a metric. That alignment justifies the investment and defines what success looks like for the whole business.
It prevents that classic problem where the IT team finishes, declares mission accomplished, but the business sees no benefit because the goals were never shared.
Exactly. Without a defined strategy, the project just lacks purpose.
Moving to methodology 2, plan. If strategy is the why, plan must be the how, when, and who.
Correct. The outcome of plan is to create a comprehensive, stakeholder-aligned plan for cloud transformation. And this is where the prep work happens, but it's about so much more than just a tech inventory.
Right, that organizational readiness piece seems crucial. What does the implementation approach focus on here beyond just counting servers?
The CF approach focuses on preparing 3 core pillars: people, processes, and technology. For technology, yes, you do a digital estate rationalization. Decide what to rehost, replatform, re-architect.
Using tools like Azure Migrate, I assume?
Exactly, to assess dependencies and estimate costs.
And for the organizational side, the people and process.
This is often the hardest part. It involves defining the required skill sets, which usually leads to forming a Cloud Center of Excellence, or CCO.
Okay.
The plan phase requires updating your operational procedures, moving from slow change control boards to automated deployment pipelines. And most practically, setting realistic timelines and budgets that will later be enforced by your governance tools. You're not just moving servers, you're changing how your people work.
I really appreciate that emphasis. It's so easy to get lost in the architecture and forget the people are the primary drivers of success.
Absolutely. The people and process elements you figure out in plan directly determine your success during the adoption phase.
Okay, next up, methodology 3. Ready. We have the mission, the roadmap, the buy-in. Now we get technical. This is where the initial infrastructure build happens.
That's a great way to put it. The strategic outcome here is to deploy enterprise-ready Azure environments that scale securely. This is the technical cornerstone, the landing zone deployment.
And the implementation detail. You mentioned landing zones. Let's get into the actual technical components required by the CAF standard.
Absolutely. So this phase requires using the CAF's prescribed blueprints, which are often provided as code templates, to establish foundational governance controls and to deploy Azure platform landing zones with integrated security.
Lay them out for us. What does a CAF-compliant landing zone have to include?
Okay, first, the whole structure has to be built using Azure management groups. These let you apply policies at a high level that just trickle down automatically. Second, a defined network topology, usually the hub and spoke model.
Okay.
And third, and this is critical, security services integrated from the start. Centralized logging via Azure Monitor and defined role-based access control RBAC structures that follow the least privilege principle.
So a landing zone isn't just an empty subscription. It's a pre-hardened, pre-monitored, network-integrated container where all deployed workloads will automatically inherit the enterprise policies.
Precisely. We use tools like Azure Blueprints to ensure these standards are applied consistently every time. By integrating security and governance here, in the ready phase, you avoid those painful retroactive security audits later on.
That leads us right into methodology 4. Adopt. We have the strategy, the plan, and the secure, ready-to-use landing zones. Now we finally use them to generate business value.
Yes. The outcome of Adopt is to deploy production workloads in Azure that deliver measurable business value. This is the moment of execution.
And what's the specific approach the CAF mandates for deployment, linking back to the well-architected framework we talked about?
This is where the rubber meets the road. For a lift and shift, you'd use tools like Azure Migrate. For modernization, you might deploy containers to Azure Kubernetes Service. But no matter the approach, the deployment has to follow the standards set by the WAF.
So the WAF ensures that when a new application is deployed to the secure landing zone from the ready phase, that specific application itself is optimized for cost, resilience, and operational health.
Exactly. And the deployment uses automated deployment accelerators like ARM templates or Bicep or Terraform code, which streamline the whole process, ensuring consistency and speed. If Ready was building the secure container, Adopt is filling that container with high-value optimized applications. Now that the foundation is built and the first workloads are deployed, we really need to shift our focus to those three critical phases that run constantly in parallel.
The operational ones.
Right. And these aren't optional. They're the success factors that ensure all the work you did in the first four phases remains effective and compliant over time.
Let me ask about a friction point here. If strategy and plan are sequential, how do you prevent the rapid deployment teams in the adopt phase from just ignoring the ongoing requirements from govern and secure? Doesn't that take a huge organizational shift?
That is the essential challenge. And the answer is entirely in automation. The CAF pushes organizations to shift from manual governance, audit reports and angry emails, to programmatic governance.
A code-enforced policy.
Exactly. By the time you get to the adopt phase, the controls from govern and secure are already baked into the landing zone with tools like Azure Policy. If a deployment team tries to spin up a resource that violates policy, say a really expensive VM or a storage account without encryption, Azure Policy just blocks the request instantly.
The technology manages the friction, not a manual review board.
That's the key.
That's a huge clarification. So let's start with methodology 5. Govern. This isn't just bureaucracy, it's enterprise control, compliance, and cost optimization.
Governance is really the backbone of the enterprise control plane. It's the regulatory layer of the entire cloud ecosystem.
What are the concrete actions required here, specifically naming the automation tools?
The approach is multifaceted. First, you define and publish your governance policies. Things like mandatory resource naming conventions, tagging standards, which are critical for cost allocation, and compliance rules.
Like data residency.
Right. Second, you have to use Azure Policy to automate the enforcement of all that. Policy lets you define effects like deny to block non-compliant actions, audit to log them, or even modify to automatically fix them.
Automated compliance enforcement. That detail is exactly what our listeners need to hear. It just removes the human error element from constant auditing.
Precisely. And governance also heavily covers implementing advanced cost management strategies, using Azure Cost Management and Billing to track spending, enforce right-sizing, and using mechanisms like Azure Reserved Instances to dramatically reduce compute costs.
It's a continuous loop that ensures you meet standards like IPay and SOC2, not just at launch, but forever.
Exactly.
That's so crucial for regulated industries. Okay, let's move to methodology 6, secure. The constant evolving battle against cyber threats. The stakes here are always escalating.
They are. Security has to be pervasive and modern. The strategic outcome is simple: protect workloads against evolving cyber threats. But the implementation requires a fundamental shift in mindset.
Away from the old perimeter security model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's get into the specifics of the CF's security posture, because there's a key concept here.
Okay.
The framework mandates implementing zero-trust security controls. This is a foundational mindset for the cloud. Zero trust means you assume breach at all times, and you verify everything explicitly, no matter where it is.
Never trust, always verify. Practically, what does that translate to in terms of Azure services?
Practically, it means strict identity and access management using Azure Active Directory, leveraging conditional access policies to enforce multi-factor authentication. It means micro-segmentation of your network using Azure Firewall and network security groups.
And beyond just prevention.
Beyond prevention, the approach requires deploying continuous threat monitoring, using Azure Sentinel Microsoft's cloud-native SIEM to collect data, detect anomalies, and automate your incident response. It's about creating a proactive, data-driven, defensive posture.
A complete technical ecosystem for defense in depth. Okay, finally, the third parallel factor, methodology 7, manage. This is about long-term health, right? Operational excellence.
Absolutely. The strategic outcome is to ensure operational excellence and continuous optimization. Once everything is running, the work isn't done. If govern handles compliance and secure handles defense, manage handles the actual health of the running system.
What are the concrete operational actions that define this phase?
The actions involve optimizing application performance constantly. This requires deep, real-time metrics gathering using Azure Monitor and its features like Application Insights. It also means maintaining high availability SLAs.
SLAs.
For mission-critical workloads, this means leveraging tools like Azure Site Recovery to build in redundancy and automated failover.
So manage isn't just watching dashboards, it's an active cyclical process of measuring, automating, and improving.
Exactly. You identify a performance bottleneck with Azure Monitor, then you automate a fix or update the architecture based on the WO principles. This phase drives continuous improvement through automation and DevOps best practices. It's a constant feedback loop.
We've covered the 7 methodologies that form the structure. Now let's talk about who this framework is actually for, because transformation guidance can feel like it's designed only for the mega enterprise.
And that's a common misconception. The adaptability is critical here. The CAF is designed to provide value no matter what your organization's cloud maturity level is. It's not one size fits all.
So the focus just shifts based on the starting point.
Precisely. We can break it down into 4 primary audiences.
Okay, start us off with the innovators, the technology startups.
For startups, it's all about speed and efficiency. The CKF helps them build cloud-native applications from inception using proven patterns and DevOps practices. This is essential for getting to market fast and avoiding costly technical debt.
Their govern phase might be pretty lean at the start.
Very lean. Focus purely on cost management and basic security, allowing them to iterate quickly, but still on structured foundation.
So it helps them build it right the first time? What about the giants, enterprise organizations?
Enterprises face complexity defined by scale and regulation. Their challenge is navigating these huge, multi-workload migrations and hybrid architectures. For them, the govern, secure, and manage methodologies become absolutely paramount.
Right.
The CAF provides the detailed enterprise governance and security controls they need to handle that regulatory burden. It turns the impossible task of migrating thousands of apps into a manageable program.
And for those just dipping their toes in, the new Azure adopters, they might just be overwhelmed.
For them, the CAF is like an accelerated curriculum. The ready phase is their focus. It helps them speed up their learning through structured guidance on deploying landing zones. The biggest benefit is prevention.
Preventing common mistakes.
Exactly. Preventing those common mistakes like poor network design that waste massive time and often force a costly rebuild 6 months later.
And finally, the existing Azure customers. They're already in the cloud, but maybe their environment has just grown organically and it's now a mess.
A very common scenario. Their journey shifts entirely from migration to maturity. The focus is on the manage and govern methodologies. The CAF helps them optimize their current deployments,
How so?
often by refactoring or right-sizing resources, implementing advanced cost management, and maturing their operations through automation. It's about auditing and standardizing an existing environment to unlock more value.
It's impressive how the same 7 phases apply, but the emphasis shifts so dramatically. Okay, let's move beyond the phases and dive deep into specific real-world scenarios. This is where it becomes really actionable.
These scenarios are the CKF providing technology-focused guidance for highly complex requirements. They really illustrate how all the methodologies work together.
Let's look at the cutting edge first. AI adoption and agents. This is a huge challenge for enterprises right now, especially around governance and ethics.
The CAF provides a dual focus here. For general AI adoption, the roadmap is heavily weighted toward the govern and secure phases. It outlines how to implement responsible AI solutions, which means deep attention to data governance and ethics.
So things like MLOps automation.
Yes, using Azure Machine Learning to ensure not just scalability, but also continuous governance checks for things like data drift and model bias.
So the framework is prescribing not just how to deploy the tech, but how to deploy it ethically. What about the specific scenario of AI agents?
That's focused on immediate productivity gains. The guidance outlines how to build, deploy, and govern AI agents to automate business processes. It covers agentic workflows, integrating them securely and critically, ensuring proper agent governance so they don't violate cost or security boundaries.
It's keeping pace with innovation. Okay, let's move to a massive one, modernizing applications.
This is often the biggest part of the adopt phase for established businesses. The CAF outlines the strategy for the modern application platform, which is a clear shift away from monolithic applications.
Towards what?
Towards modernizing using containers, like with AKS, adopting a microservices architecture, and heavily using Azure PaaS services like Azure SQL Database or Cosmos DB.
That shift from iOS to PaaS must drastically change how govern and manage are implemented.
It does. With PaaS, Microsoft manages the underlying OS, so your managed focus shifts entirely to application-level optimization. The ultimate outcome is a complete DevOps transformation.
Let's move to the high-stakes, mission-critical stuff, the things that absolutely cannot fail. Let's talk Oracle on Azure and SAP on Azure.
These are perfect examples of applying the CF to complex, high-value workloads. For Oracle on Azure, the guidance ensures you can run those workloads with optimized performance and cost. It covers migration strategies, high availability, and deep performance tuning.
And for SAP, that's often the core ERP system running the entire business. The tolerance for downtime is zero.
Absolutely zero. The SAP on Azure scenario is heavily focused on deploying and operating SAP with enterprise-grade reliability. It tackles the unique, massive scale requirements of SAP HNA environments.
Sometimes requiring specialized hardware, right?
Yes, sometimes even specialized compute like Azure Large Instances, which are dedicated non-virtualized servers.
That's fascinating, that even within the cloud, some workloads demand specialized hardware, and the CAF provides the governance roadmap for that specific complexity.
It does. And it focuses on using tools like Azure Center for SAP solutions to automate the high availability and disaster recovery setup,
Yeah.
tying directly back to the managed methodology.
Finally, let's briefly touch on the specialized scenarios. Hybrid and desktop solutions. For organizations that can't move entirely to the public cloud.
Right. These handle specific architectural needs. The Azure VMware Solution, AVS scenario, guides organizations on migrating existing VMware workloads to Azure with zero downtime and maintain operational consistency.
So it's for companies with huge VMware investments who want cloud scale without re-architecting everything.
Exactly. AVS is essentially a specific CAF-governed landing zone optimized for VMware operations.
And for the desktop solution.
That's the Azure Virtual Desktop AVD scenario. It's about delivering virtual desktops at enterprise scale for remote work. And crucially, the framework ensures these deployments include all the necessary security and compliance controls to manage end-user computing in a distributed world.
Wow. So from building a startup app from scratch to governing an ethical AI solution to migrating a mission-critical SAP system, the CAF really seems to be the underlying backbone for all of it. So let's bring this deep dive to a close. For the learner out there looking for a structured, comprehensive way to conquer the complexity of the cloud, the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework delivers a highly disciplined roadmap.
We saw that structure very clearly defined. The sequential foundational journey strategy, plan, ready, adopt, which builds the environment. And the three parallel success factors, govern, secure, manage, which ensure continuous operational excellence, programmatic security, and enforced cost control.
And the CAF is designed explicitly to mitigate the three most common risks: cost overruns, timeline delays, and catastrophic security failures. It does that by replacing guesswork with prescriptive, validated roadmaps.
And its power is amplified by that tight integration with compliance frameworks and detailed design guidance like the well-architected framework. It essentially provides the complete enterprise blueprint for standardized cloud success.
Which brings us to our final connection and the provocative thought for you, the listener, to carry forward. We've seen how the CF standardizes success by providing these comprehensive, validated, step-by-step methodologies. It provides the perfect process.
And this raises an important question for you to consider as you apply this knowledge. In the age of these comprehensive, validated, programmatic methodologies, where governance and security are baked into the foundation by automated tools, how much is cloud transformation success now defined by rigorously following a standardized process versus purely relying on unique technical brilliance or individual ingenuity?
What is that perfect practical balance between adhering strictly to the framework's robust standards and injecting that unique technical invention needed to solve tomorrow's unforeseen challenge? Something to mull over as you begin to structure your own journey with a cloud adoption framework. That's been the deep dive.